there's an issue that we need to be aware of if you aren't already. Some of you have already heard about this involving the World Health Organization. And one person sounding the alarm is our friend Frank Gaffney from the program Securing America, heard weekdays at 10 p.m. Central Time right here on American Family Radio. Frank hosts the show Securing America, and we've invited him on now to tell us about this. Frank, good morning.
Good morning to you, gents.
You're well versed in this and deep into it and understanding it, but there may be a lot of people listening right now who have not heard about this whole situation. So can you start from the beginning?
I'll give you the shortest of short courses because
Yes.
I know time is limited. The World Health Organization was started in 1948, basically to help provide advice to nations around the world, particularly underdeveloped ones, about basic sanitation. Just how you could have a healthier population by not doing stupid things like pouring sewage into the streets, that sort of thing. Over the years, it has morphed a bit, but most especially in the period leading up to and following the COVID pandemic. Why that's so important is the guy who is the Director General of the World Health Organization, a fellow by the name of Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who, by the way, was selected for this position out of obscurity as a minister in an Ethiopian government that was regarded by ours as a terrorist regime, was plucked for that job by the Chinese Communist Party. And what he has done in this pandemic period and then subsequent to it is to try to amass power and exercise it in a way that has proven to be not just harmful but deadly. In fact, two of our best doctors, Dr. Robert Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough, believe that something on the order of 1 million Americans who perished during the COVID pandemic died needlessly because of the bad advice that they were given by Tedros Ghebreyesus. The bad advice including adopting what he called the China model for contending with a pandemic, which involved, as you may remember, putting on masks, social distancing, quarantining, lockdowns, jabs, mandatory jabs at that, with inadequately tested and it turns out unsafe so-called vaccines. They weren't even vaccines. They were actually just radical gene therapies. This bad advice cost us dearly in terms of not only loss of life, but countless billions of dollars, and, the upheaval in our society that resulted in the removal of Donald Trump from the presidency. Now, get this. The World Health Organization, under Tedros' leadership, has come up with a plan with the strong support, by the way, of the Biden administration and Tedros' Chinese masters and the World Economic Forum of Davos and the European Union and Bill Gates and Big Pharma, all these globalists who have in mind what they call global governance. And the World Health Organization is intended to be the leading edge of that because Tedros Ghebreyesus, if not one, but two treaties are approved by a group called the World Health Assembly, the member nations of the World Health Organization, starting on the 27th of May. If they approve these two treaties, Tedros Ghebreyesus will be given not only the authority to make advice and recommendations to us about public health policy, he will be able to dictate when we have a public health emergency of international concern. And not only that, but to dictate what we must do in response to it. He's also got, by the way, some rather sweeping ideas as to what would constitute a public health emergency of international concern. He includes among those climate change, reproductive rights, transgender rights, issue of poverty, the issue of instability, the issue of gun violence.
This has nothing to do with diseases. Okay.
It believes it's not pandemics, that's for sure, but he thinks it has something to do with health. He also, by the way, I think believes that Gaza is a public health emergency of international concern, and I think one of the things he will do with all this power is he will tell Israel it must stop its operations there. It must stop short of destroying Hamas, and that sets the stage for the compulsory surrender of Israel as a practical matter. This is all stuff that need not happen to us, but that's what's in the works right now, and I so appreciate you taking the time to talk about it.
Absolutely. We're talking to Frank Gaffney, host of Securing America, heard weeknights here on American Family Radio at 10 o'clock Central Time, about the World Health Organization and what's supposed to happen on May the 27th. But let me ask you this, Frank. You know, our country, as it stands now, we look to, and I know people are going to laugh, but I'm just telling you how it has traditionally been. Up until COVID, I think some of these groups had more of a good reputation, not so much anymore, but the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. All right, so you have these groups, the American Medical Association, for example, and then you've got your state agencies like state health departments, for example, and they are basically the look-to organizations for public health in the U.S. And now you're telling me, but even those organizations aren't dictatorships. They have to go, a lot of times governors and or legislatures consent to giving these organizations more power because they, are experts in the field of health, of public health, for example. But so explain to me the mechanism that the World Health Organization would use to subvert authority on American soil and with the American people, public health requirements.
You made several really important points there in terms of most especially how so many of these institutions have now lost the confidence of the American people. And how did that happen? Well, it happened because they were following Tedros Ghebreyesus' prescriptions and directions. And what that has translated into is not just that they did fool things, if I can use that expression, but they created conditions under which we are now, I think, on notice as to what's going to come if this whole thing follows the course that is planned. We will have people doing what happened to us the last time. We'll have doctors who have been basically paid to go along with this program. We'll have pharmacists who will refuse to fill prescriptions if it's not approved therapies according to the World Health Organization. We'll have government agencies that, despite their own plans for example, pandemic responses, that will jettison those plans in order to do what the World Health Organization, which is, by the way, not some center of great competency on medicine. Far from it. We've got a Dr. David Bell, who worked for the World Health Organization. He's the first to tell you these guys don't know what they're doing. The truth of the matter is much of this went down because people were panicked. And when they panic because they fear, some kind of health crisis, tyrants step in and take advantage of it. And we saw some of that even, frankly, from governors in states here in the United States. You remember churches that weren't allowed to
lockdowns,
worship services when
lockdowns that went on and on and on. Not
on and on and on.
On and on and on.
Exactly
Michigan, for example, I call her Governor Lockdown.
Most people would say this can't possibly happen here. I'm just telling you, it did happen in this pandemic.
Yeah. This is Wesley Wildman here. I got a quick question. So obviously, in the last, 10 or 20 years, at least in my adult life, the country has not been any more divided hard and in opposition from the left and the right. I mean, the intensity is as high as I've seen it in my adult life. However, with all the division and the hard lines, this is one area that overwhelming majority of Americans are saying no to masks, no to lockdowns, no to social distancing, no to mandating.
We're not doing that again.
The coercion. That there was a hard shift to get up to the 65% of Americans going, we're not, not doing that. So what can we do as Americans to stop what you're talking about that could potentially happen? Because surely when you got the majority on your side in this issue, we can do something.
You're absolutely right. And I thank you so much for the really important question. The truth of the matter is, none of what I just described to you could take place unless the American people are kept absolutely in the dark about what's going on here. And that's what's happening. They're having negotiations as we speak in Geneva, Switzerland, to cook up these new arrangements that are going to replace our constitutional form of government with what they call, as I said, global governance, meaning run by a tyrant in the person of this Tedros Ghebreyesus, completely unaccountable, completely, unrepresentative, for that matter, of any of us. The answer to your question about what we can do about this is we can light this up. We can do what we're doing here, yes, and what we do on our show, Securing America, every night on your station. And I thank God for that, your stations.
Amen.
We can make sure that the American people are not blindsided by this. I call it the Nancy Pelosi rule. These guys have in mind, they'll let you know what's in this after they've approved it. That cannot be done.
Can we stop it?
Senate,
can we stop? Can we stop it from happening?
100%. We can stop it. I'm telling you right now, we can stop it, and here's how we can stop it. We can become knowledgeable about what they're doing. We can go to the sovereigntycoalition.org website, and we can sign a statement that says, not now, not ever, frankly, but not now. We do not want these treaties to be finalized in the next month, which is the plan. And more to the point, what we need to do is we need to go to every single person. I'm fond of saying that, generally politicians don't care a whole lot about you, but in the run-up to an election, they do. We can talk to every single candidate for the Congress, incumbent or otherwise, every single senator, especially incumbent or otherwise, every candidate for governor, and for sure the candidates for president of the United States. And we can ask them, where do you stand on surrendering our sovereignty, sir or ma'am? Where do you stand on giving up states' rights? The federal government doesn't have the right to manage federal health policy. It's not one of the enumerated powers.
Right.
And where do you stand on giving up my individual medical freedom? I don't want Dr. Tedros as my doctor.
Sure.
But that's what's in prospect now. That's what we saw in the pandemic.
Here's
the thing, folks.
Has
if
anybody
you simply help us light this up,
okay,
we will turn this off, I believe.
What about congressmen or senators? Usually when you get issues like this, you hear from Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. You hear from Ted Cruz from Texas. You hear from Missouri. Help me out here.
Josh Hawley.
Josh Hawley, for example. Those three come to mind. There are others. Those are senators. Is anybody taking the lead or speaking out directly on this in Congress?
The best guy in the United States Senate is Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He has been doing it. Most of the rest, if they know anything about it, have been pretty quiet, frankly. But
Ron Johnson,
saying,
okay.
Especially guys like Ted Cruz, who are up for re-election. When he was Solicitor General of Texas, he litigated some important states' rights cases before the Supreme Court. He should be all over this thing. In fact, every Republican should be all over it.
Right.
They have all co-sponsored legislation saying, at a minimum, these treaties have to come to the Senate for its advice and consent. But my point is this, if I may just make a concluding comment. Where this thing will go off the rails, I believe, is when Democrats, as one of you was just saying a moment ago, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. Democrats should recognize that they have a responsibility to save our sovereignty as much as Republicans. And if we make it clear that there will be the ultimate penalty paid by anybody, Democratic or Republican, who goes along to prevent these treaties from being approved, and then we're being stuck with them. We may try to get out from under them. Maybe Donald Trump will come in. But all of that means months and months and months of being under this tyranny, and it'll be very hard to get out from under it. So sovereigntycoalition.org is where I want them to go, all of our folks, but also to start talking about this, start demanding answers from people seeking your vote. Make sure that everybody understands that if you're voting to surrender our sovereignty and our personal medical freedom, not only won't you get my vote, but you're going to lose your job if you've already got it, period. And that, especially if Joe Biden takes that aboard, I think you're going to find he's going to not want any part of having to run for re-election on the basis that he surrendered your sovereignty to some communist agent in Geneva.
Well, listen, thank you, Frank, for warning us about this. If I call my congressman or my senator and I speak to them, which I'm encouraging everybody to do, can you put it in a nutshell what I need to say? Because the receptionist on the other end of the phone will be taking a note to, they take notes from their constituencies. Do I just say to them, tell Congressman or tell Senator so-and-so to stop this May 27th treaty with the World Health Organization? Is that what I say?
That's pretty good. It's actually 2 treaties. It could happen between the 27th and the 1st of June. But the main thing is you want to say, don't surrender my sovereignty.
Okay. To the World Health Organization. Okay, gotcha.
To the World Health Organization or, frankly, anybody else.
Yeah.
Most immediately, that's the idea, is to give Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus the right to become my personal doctor.
Gotcha.
I won't have it, and I will not vote for you if you do that to me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Much.
God bless you. You are vital to this cause.
Thank you, sir.
PropertyCoalition.org. Check it out.
Thank you.